Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Soundbites for Immigration Success. We bring you this podcast series so you can get to know your fellow colleagues, hear their story and their passion, what inspired them to become an immigration consultant, perhaps their greatest challenge and how they've tackled it, and their final takeaway advice for you in terms of entering the profession or advice as you're ongoing. I have with us today CAPIC's CEO, Dory Jade. Hi, Dory.
Hi, Monica. Thanks for having me today.
It's a pleasure to have you. Dory, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to become an immigration consultant?
Thank you. Well, in fact, it goes back really more than 20 years. And the point was very simple. I have seen around me a lot of people who are having hard time understanding the immigration system. When at my end, I found it pretty much simple. So at this stage of my life, I decided to say, okay, why don't I use my understanding skills, because at the time we were not regulated before 2004, and try to help those individuals around me. And this is really where it started. Then in 2004, I joined regulation and become at the time an immigration consultant under the regime back then, when in 2007, due to competence and exams and language skills and stuff, we dropped to 700 immigration consultants only, because all others did not pass the language and the skill exam. So since 2006, I am involved in multiple roles in this field, and today became the CEO of President and CEO of CAPIC for the last 11 years or so.
So you're an immigrant yourself, right? Tell us where you're from.
Well, I'm originally Lebanese. I immigrated here right after university. I finished part of my university also in Canada, and I got a chartered director designation from McMaster University, the Groot School of Business. And I took my journey. My main background is mass communication, adding to it management and finance, brought me to where I am now.
And when you first came to Canada, you and your family settled in Montreal, right?
I settled in Montreal and remain in Montreal. I mean, I live in Laval, which is the suburb, but technically in Montreal, yes. And we love it here. And I can also tell you that when I was hired to be the CEO of CAPIC, unlike every other position at the time, because there was nothing called remote work, I was hired with the condition to remain living in Montreal, staying in Montreal with my family when the head office was in Toronto at the time.
Wow. So CAPIC was ahead of its time. And when you first came to Canada, was your first language always French or was it English? Because I know you're bilingual.
Yeah, my first language has been French since long time, and I'm born in an area where the colonial French dominance has remained very strong. And I went to a French university, school from day one, and English university. That's why I am bilingual.
Yeah. And if anybody at all knows Dory, he likes to say English is not my first language.
I do.
So I know, so you're an immigration consultant really for about 15 years. I know in the last several years, you've given it up to sort of focus on your role as CEO, as CAPIC, and leading CAPIC sort of into, the next iteration of what it's meant to be and the industry itself. So this leads me to my next question. What for you has been the greatest challenge? And you could take it either as a consultant when you were a consultant, or you can take it wider and maybe as your role when you were president of CAPIC or in your CEO role. I leave that up to you.
Thank you. So let's just clarify something that is very important. I have been an immigration consultant, as you said, for over 15 years. However, when you take a position like the CEO of CAPIC, you need to really have a vision, broader view, of what is going on. And in order to do that, you really need to a little bit disconnect from being an immigration practitioner. So you need to look at how this evolves, how the industry is built, and your scope of delivery becomes completely different from a practitioner running an office. So I took a leave of absence. At the time, many of the senior members said, don't leave. We don't want you to resign. You need to remain part of us. And probably they didn't get that idea of, I'm not looking to not be part of you. I'm rather looking to be someone who can look from the shore to the ship and see how that ship needs to continue its course. So it's not that. Then I had to resign because the regulation is clear. You cannot take a leave of absence forever. So it was a leave of absence to be able not to be conflicting with my current job, and then it became a resignation, which I would assume you understand that means I cannot come back except if I go through the whole process. So it was a very thought decision before I took it. Now, let's speak about the most challenging part of the job and of the whole profession. And I can tell you in 2 words, the most challenging part was to convince people that they can have a federal statute. Not that they have it or they don't, that CAPIC, led by some of the, I would say, best people in this industry, can get you federal statute. There was 3 challenges facing us. The first one, constitutional. So the Constitution allowed immigration consultants to have a federal statute. However, the political burden around it, provincial, federal, other entities, NGOs, lawyers, those who do not want you to get regulated and build into the blend of this society, were all not supporting the idea. So we had to take it over 5 years of work, through which many immigration consultants at the time, I would say, felt like, oh, it's a lost battle. So we never felt that at any moment of the process, because we were very involved with the department, with the ministers, with the PMO, with the Prime Minister himself. And we got the College Act into place that today allows all of the 11,500 plus immigration consultants to practice properly, be recognized, be accountable, because at the end of the day, if you are not accountable, you can't name yourself professional. It comes as a bundle. You cannot pick up one and leave the other. You want to serve people, great. However, you still need to be accountable to those you are serving. And that was the biggest challenge. It was the fact of making the immigration consultants believe in becoming federally regulated, which we are. The second was legality, which we overcame with one of Canada's best constitutional expert, Professor Hogg, who passed away during COVID. And then we should understand also the third challenge, which I should name here Gerd Damitz, who definitely was one of those who believed in that idea even before me putting it out there in the public. And we took it further and further in all levels, departments, political side, opposition, and we wanted to make out of it a non-partisan decision of the parliament. And we got to the level where the parliament having a extraterritorial authority was used in this act to allow the regulator in a way or another to go after those who are practicing this profession without being regulated or licensed now in Canada and overseas. However, we have to understand there are still limitations when you are in different jurisdictions, but you still have that power. So this is really the most challenging part, and I can confirm to you it's really there. We did it. CAPIC was there for you, and it was done.
And I think, Dory, it's important for our audience. Many of those listening will not even really understand what federal statute was and what the state of the profession was prior to gaining the authority to have immigration consultancy enshrined in law. And basically that's what federal statute is, where it's recognized under the law. And like other professions such as lawyers, doctors, and pharmacists, and we're treated the same. So prior to federal statute, what was the state of the profession? We were, the regulator was under not-for-profit, and the government of the day, any government of the day, could simply decide to just sort of wipe out the profession with the stroke of a pen. Was that not correct?
You are 100% correct. It was a partisan-related entity where the Liberals would create one entity, which is at the time the Canadian Society of Immigration Consultants. Then the Conservatives would come and create another entity, which is ICCRC, that most of you know. And then another government would have come and created a third entity, and then those immigration consultants would have no recognition, would be, as I used to name them, and I am very happy they're not there anymore, the bamboos in the air. If the air goes west, those bamboos bend down to the same direction of the wind, and if the wind goes to the east, they have to bend down to the other side. So what we did is we really said, this has to stop and become a regulated under federal statute, act of parliament. It will be very, very difficult for someone to go and change that statute in the near future.
So that's really why it's important for anybody practicing today who, as an immigration consultant, to understand the genesis and the framework behind it, so that they have the right and the privilege to represent clients as citizenship and immigration practitioners. And for those of us who've been around a long time, we might talk about that a little too much, but we feel it's always important to know that history. So this brings me to my final question. Well, maybe two. That was your biggest challenge and you've accomplished it. So what's your next goal then?
I would like to start by saying a little bit related to the previous question, that there is a book already out there, and we are issuing a new book in the first quarter of 2024, in which we will be also describing the details of the federal statute and the College Act and how it became into force. So the future is not simpler than the past at all. The aim of CAPIC is the following. In a nutshell, ensure that every immigration consultant and every student into consultancy in Queens or Université de Montréal know very well that if there was no CAPIC, they would not have even been into this program to start. If we can get there and make the direct link between the association that represents their best interest and the best interest of the profession and the regulator who regulate them as practitioners, then CAPIC would have achieved its ultimate goal. Every single member out there or immigration consultant should know that they have to be members of CAPIC. CAPIC is not a service provider. CAPIC is the core of the existence of this whole profession. And anything beyond has to be very, very well thought, where you go, who you do business with, and why you are a member of this organization. That would be the future that we should all together, members and those who have been there for a very long time, fight for.
Yeah, and Dory, further to that, almost every person that I've interviewed in this podcast, I think you're the 16th or 17th, most have come back to that to say it's not about necessarily the education or the networking. It's those intangibles about having somebody that's got your back and somebody who fights for you. So I really think in the end, that's what CAPIC has done. So this is really about you though. And we haven't, anytime you're on a podium, you always tell a little bit of fact about yourself. You have great vision, but you also don't have vision. So talk to us a little bit about your vision.
All right, thank you. So my vision for CAPIC is very, I would say, very sharp and accurate. And I know where this organization should go. Now, probably some of you don't know, but some others do know. That's why you need to come to the NCIC, because I say it every NCIC, I'm legally blind. So my sight is impacted by my vision for CAPIC is very sharp. And I have been leading this organization for 12 years. And in the last 10 years, the organization grew by tenfold. This is an uncommon growth in any industry, if you have been involved in any kind of industry. So we went from 400 members to 4,500 this year, the 11th year. So over tenfold. That is not common in 10 years.
Well, thank you for sharing that, both your vision and non-vision. I guess my last question for you then is, what would be your advice to somebody entering the profession today? And I know it would be join CAPIC, but I want to hear beyond that. The advice for somebody who's maybe thinking of becoming an immigration consultant, or maybe they just graduated. What would be your advice to them?
Thank you for asking. It's a very important question. And I hope my insight would help the newcomers. First, look at why you want to join. What is the motive of you going through the courses, through the program, getting your exam, and then becoming member or licensed immigration consultant? Get the motive clear. Once you get it clear, all other aspects will be settling down in a way on their own. So if your aim, for example, is to help immigrants coming to Canada, this is too broad. You really need to go and say, okay, I am looking to help those who want to come to Canada, for example, and cannot make it within the current available programs. Or it could be something like, I want to help immigrants coming to Canada who are refugees or looking to be refugees. Or you may want to say, I want to help employers who need external or foreign labor force. So you need to identify what do you want even before enrolling in the program. Once you enroll in the program and you become an immigration consultant, then you need to also identify two levels. Most of the immigration consultants now coming into this profession think, I want to be on my own. I can do 3 cases and pay my expenses. And I can tell you the numbers speak to that. Over 10% of, over more than 10%, I think 14% of the regulators last year, immigration consultants have resigned. All right. If you don't know that statistics, check it on the annual report. What does that mean? That means they didn't take the right decision in saying, I want to get employed, I want to learn, I want to be part of a group like CAPIC, I want to succeed, and then go on my own. There is a long process before you become your own employer. It's not overnight. You can't make it. And those who make it are very, very small group that are even less than 1% of the statistics. So make sure really you understand what you're going into, what do you want out of it. There is something, for example, I'm still speaking about CAPIC, but that's what I'm here to do in a way. There's the IME jobs. This is where we are trying to offer market availability for those immigration consultants who want a job, because you need a job. You cannot start from scratch. It's very risky. It is no different at all from anything like from anything different from being an entrepreneur. So the risk is there. You should mitigate and minimize the risk to the max when you get into this profession.
Well, Dory, wise words from somebody who's been through it about figuring out why you're doing this, identifying your key areas, and starting with a plan in mind, and also understanding that it doesn't happen overnight, that it takes time, and have checks and balances in place and work to minimize and mitigate the risk while protecting yourself and offering a good service. So my last and final question to you is, you've had a unique path, unique within the industry itself, because you're what you're doing right now. But if you had to do it all over again, would you do it all over again? Would you take the same path?
I would not have changed a comma in that path, Monica. I am grateful, I'm thankful, and I recognize and thank every member who has, in a way or another, gave me the trusted his trust in me, recognized my skills, and allowed me to be here to support the whole membership and the profession to be where it is. I am so grateful, and I am humbled to continue serving the membership.
Dory, I want to thank you for your service, for your wisdom, for your vision, for your honesty, and for being part of this today. I think those in the audience will have learned a little bit about you, a little bit about who you are and where you're going and what you still want to impart. I'll leave you with a final opportunity to say some final words to our audience, if you wish.
I would just say again, thank you. And I wish you really all the best, all of you in your careers. Thank you. Thank you, Monica, for having me.
It's been a pleasure, Dory. Thank you. Thank you for all that you've done, and thank you for your friendship. Thank you to all of you out there. We hope that you learned something today, that you gained some takeaways for your practice and for your life within the profession. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.